Welcome to the truth about beer.
Yeah, we need to toast our first episode here. Thanks to Joe for having us.
Well, thanks for coming out. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
All right, cool. Episode 1, truth about beer and snakes.
Ooh.
Exciting. So we're here with Joe Hines from the Phoenix Herpetological Sanctuary.
Now the Herpetological Sanctuary.
Used to be
Glad
Society.
To be here.
So typically what we're doing on these podcasts is we feature beer choice, and I was told you like Blue Moon, so that's what we brought you here.
Excellent.
What other type of beers you like?
I'm a big fan of Four Peaks Brewery. I like pretty much everything that they have, from Kilt Lifter to their Hop Knot's probably my favorite. I like IPAs, hoppy beers.
Joey's a big hoppy.
Nice.
That's
hoppy
probably
beer
my,
guy.
yeah, it's up there.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, yeah. I like the,
You like hop knot?
Got
well, I like Hop Knot from there, absolutely. No.
Triple Knot 2.
No, New Belgium's.
They're double or triple IPA.
Voodoo.
Voodoo
Ranger.
Voodoo Ranger, yeah. Voodoo Ranger's good.
No, that was actually the one I was thinking of. I think in one of the emails I sent too late. It's their Imperial IPA. I think that's
that's the one.
Imperial's the full name.
Yeah,
That's one of my favorites.
Have you tried their pumpkin, their atomic pumpkin?
I haven't.
So we joke about it because last year we found it and we loved it so much that Joey went to the local Fry's by my house and he
Well, they didn't have it by my Fry's.
What's that?
Yeah, they didn't have it at my Fry's, and he said, "Oh, they got it at mine." I said, "Oh, cool." So I went over and cleaned them out,
Nice.
and that was the end of what they got in.
That was it because it was. They said it was seasonal, but they stopped carrying it long before the season was over. I think it was before Halloween they stopped carrying it. Wasn't it, or Thanksgiving?
Oh yeah, it was long gone.
You couldn't find it anymore.
Before it was even seasonal.
It's crazy. We'll get a bunch of pumpkin donations weeks before Thanksgiving. I would think that the season would go all the way through there, but
And then it just
Halloween it comes, and then they're giving us all the pumpkins to feed out to the tortoises.
that's crazy. That's crazy. So yeah, so
Good things
Bloom-
don't go to waste.
No, it's not. And actually, they used to have. I don't know if they still do, but they had this lady that would come around and drop off all the vegetables and fruits that weren't used. She would come like once a week with a trailer and drop off a lot of the fruits and vegetables.
We've got a few people that'll bring us their lawn clippings, but now we mostly go out. There are 2 Costco's in town and 2 Whole Foods that we'll go out to, and we have an hourly staff member now who goes out, and that's his job, is picking up the greens 3 days a week.
Right on. Very cool. So yeah, it's a good choice with the Blue Moon. Did some research on it. Invented by Keith Villa, as we're going to say, back in 1995. What was it originally called? I was trying to... Belly Side Belgian White was the original name for it, which is cool.
Doesn't quite roll off the tongue like
No,
Blue Moon
Blue
does.
Blue Moon rolls a lot easier.
And it's brewed in Montreal, Quebec, which was news to me, news to you.
Yeah.
So,
So it's all about.
what's that?
That's what it's all about.
That's all about. Hey?
Hey. Yes.
Yeah, very cool. It's got malted barley, white ruby, orange peel. That's why they usually garnish it with an orange, I think, when you get it at the bar or get it on tap. And then coriander and oats. Isn't coriander's a flower, isn't it? I don't even know what coriander is.
Shoot, you got me.
It's a flower.
I think so.
That sounds like a flower.
Or some spice,
I
I
think
hear.
it is. Somebody will correct me. I know that's going to happen.
Well, it comes from a plant of some sort. I think we'll.
That's
We'll just
probably not
stick with
toxic.
that. Probably not. Yeah, exactly. You don't feed coriander.
No.
So yeah, so we're launching off a series. We talked about doing a series on fear,
Okay.
and the first thing that comes to mind for me is fear of snakes.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah. I had a major fear of snakes when I was a kid.
No kidding.
I used to have this reoccurring nightmare that I was running on my front lawn and these snakes were chasing me, biting at my ankles. So
We might start having those nightmares tonight.
You might after what you saw.
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't be alone. I was just having a conversation with some volunteers this morning, kind of talking about things leading up to this podcast, and a few of them were mentioning that they, since volunteering here, have had nightmares about venomous snakes biting them, non-venomous snakes biting them. When I first started volunteering, I had dreams about the green mamba as a reoccurring dream.
Right.
Wow.
No way I'm ever working with them. And a year later, I took over the room.
So that's a good point to bring up. So you work with all the venomous on site then?
Yep. Yeah, I'm the primary venomous caretaker. I couldn't do it without the help of a lot of volunteers, but I'm the one who, at the end of the day, makes sure it's all done.
So does that mean you milk them and stuff?
We don't milk them here. Russ goes back to just kind of the law of probability. The more times you're grabbing an animal right behind the head and trying to milk them, the more chances there are to get bit and have one of those close calls. So we just house them. We've worked with facilities that milk them, but we don't directly do that.
So I know it's used, a lot of the venom nowadays is used in medical research. I know they were doing Alzheimer's studies for, was it cobra venom, I think maybe they were using for Alzheimer's?
Yeah, I remember hearing something about
I guess
that.
they take the proteins out of it and they use proteins for the treatment, to develop the treatments. So, all the anti-venom is made from horse serum.
Yeah,
It's
a
still
lot of
made
it.
from horse serum.
Yeah, horse and sheep and goats,
Yeah.
depending on which make it is.
It's crazy.
Some
I
wild
like
stuff.
goats.
Goats are fun. Goats are always funny to watch too. Yeah, and I used to volunteer for the Phoenix Herpetological Society at the time, way back, and I want to say it was 05 through maybe 08.
Okay.
And I learned a lot. So it got me over my fear of snakes, which I went from one extreme to the other. I went from being afraid of them to owning a lot.
That's a
You
big
remember
jump.
when they had all the
Oh, heck
snakes?
yeah.
I had a whole room
Freak
full.
the crap out of me. Stay out of that back room.
It keeps the in-laws away, though.
Well, actually, the in-laws at the time actually liked
Oh, okay.
the snake, so it didn't
Well, it
work.
works for me.
My parents, on the other hand, I don't know if they really enjoyed the fact that I had rattlesnakes in my house, but
Yeah.
it wasn't the best. But yeah, and I know it's true with antivenom. I think a lot of people don't realize that once you get a dose, isn't the second dose that you get is less effective. Is that true? You build up a tolerance to it, I think.
I don't know if that's so much an issue that they have anymore. I think the bigger issue that they have is a lot of people will metabolize the antivenom quicker than they metabolize the venom itself.
So it's not as effective.
So it's not as effective. People will start having a remission of symptoms. They'll start feeling better. Swelling will start going down. And sometimes they would actually get discharged from the hospital. Then a day later, the body processes out all the antivenom, and the venom's still kicking around, and they start having their hands swell up again.
Wow.
And kind of a delayed
That's something I never-
result from it.
Yeah, I never knew that either. That's interesting. That's an interesting fact.
Now they started monitoring your urine to make sure that you actually have cleared all the venom. When you stop having dead kidney cells show up in your
Right.
urine, they know that you've probably processed most of it out.
Yeah. Yeah, that actually leads to my next question. Is a big misconception in a lot of the first aid classes you used to take when you were dealing with desert. They would tell you if you get bit to throw a tourniquet on it, and that's actually completely opposite of what you're supposed to be doing.
Worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually will teach people what to do in that worst case scenario, and it's first thing, if you're bitten on the hand or wrist, as soon as possible you want to elevate it, and that's because you want the venom to spread throughout your body. It seems counterintuitive, but you want your body to spread it out, dilute the venom, and if your whole body starts hurting, you start feeling pain in your legs and arms, it's a good sign that your body's doing a good job of that on its own.
Yeah, especially with the I forgot I had my glasses on. The hemotoxic venom, because it starts to eat away at your flesh. If you isolate it with a tourniquet, the damage is going to be a lot more.
Yeah, you're trapping it in one area with nothing to defend you against it.
And it's not cheap. You get bit, it's very expensive. It's an expensive bill.
Oh,
at
I
the
can
hospital.
imagine.
That's the joke. The bite won't kill you, but the hospital bill
Hospital
will.
bill will. Yep, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know Russ used to talk about when he got bit all the time, and it was pretty scary when he tells the story.
Oh, jeez.
I think it was they charged like $75,000 or something like that for the helicopter ride, just for the helicopter ride to the hospital. If they have to fly.
No, it's all right. I'll walk.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. So how many different species of rattlesnakes do we have here in Arizona? I know we have a lot.
Yeah, we actually have more than any other state. We've got 13 species here. If you talk to the people at Game and Fish, or people who really nerd out about all the species and subspecies, some of them will get that number all the way up to 17 species of rattlesnake. But but 13's the accepted number, and that's more than any other state. So this is really a great hot spot if you love reptiles.
Yeah. So in turn, it's a big problem. It's a big problem for the growth that we have and the residents we have here, because we move into their territory, and they're going to be there.
Oh yeah, we'll go to remove a rattlesnake from someone's backyard, and it's either they're surrounded by desert and they're all over, and this is where the rattlesnakes live, and they just have to get used to it, or it's the opposite problem where sprawl's gone so bad it's a rattlesnake in the backyard and no open desert for miles, and leaves us in a tough spot for knowing where to relocate these animals.
Yeah, I can imagine. And did the fire departments, do they still relocate as well? Will they?
If it's a slow day, that's kind of what I've gotten from them. We've actually gone out and trained a lot of the fire departments how to remove rattlesnakes and kind of first responder stuff. Don't apply a tourniquet and things like that.
Right.
And that's kind of what I've gotten from them, is if it's a slow day, they'll come out and do it. Some of the departments have a policy against it, I guess. A few years ago, they had done a rattlesnake removal and got instantly called out on a fire afterwards. And after hours of fighting this fire, they're exhausted, forgot about the rattlesnake, and it's just in a burlap sack, and one of their guys sat on it. So I know one of the departments now has a policy against doing it altogether.
Gives new meaning to the pain in the ass, huh?
Right on.
I can't imagine. God, that'd be horrible. So your season for removals typically start around March, April? I think,
Yeah, about
when
March.
it starts to get warm.
Yeah, this year was a little later than most,
It'll
but
stay cool for so long.
yeah. But usually we start getting our first couple calls in March, and that will continue all the way up till the end of November.
Wow, it goes that far out. Huh?
Yeah.
And then you get the newborns that come out.
Oh yeah. We'll go out, pick up a little, anywhere from 6-inch to maybe 12-inch baby rattlesnake in a neighborhood, and we usually know we'll be getting 2 or 3 more calls from that same neighborhood, all the neighbors.
Yeah. It was funny because when I first started, everybody used to say, I always heard that the babies are more venomous than the adults are, and that's kind of a misconception too, I think.
Yep. Yeah, that's definitely a misconception. I think kind of the grain of truth that comes from is they are more likely to inject venom every time, where an adult rattlesnake that's been around longer and has had time to realize what's the threat and not a threat, they can choose to withhold venom and do what's called a dry bite. I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah.
And adults are much more likely to do a dry bite than a juvenile. But if you do get an actual envenomation from an adult, their heads are much bigger, their venom glands are much bigger, and it'll be a more severe bite because of that, just the sheer quantity of venom he gets more from an adult.
That's a good point to know, for sure. Still don't mess with the babies.
Yeah, don't mess with the babies either.
You get these guys that have a few beers and they go out and they think they're
It's a very common factor.
Yep. I think that's what they used to say, is that that's the first question they ask you when you get brought to the hospital, is how much have you been drinking when you get bit? Because it's true.
Oh yeah.
People are all muscular when they're little
Does it help you process the venom faster? You have to pee a lot, or is it?
by drinking more?
Yeah, just curious.
I don't know if it flushes out of your body.
Oh, I'll have to do this for science now.
Yeah, right. So we have to test
Well, it
it.
helps thin the blood, so
I know a couple of guys that would probably volunteer, so I could probably think of a few. So, I guess a big problem, and I've heard it over the years too, is a big thing that people will do when they see a rattlesnake. They'll take a shovel and kill it, and it bothered me more when I became a volunteer, because I learned more about the animals and gained more respect for them. And the more I heard about that, it really started bothering me. Is that still common?
Oh yeah, it's sometimes it's a race when we go out to respond to a rattlesnake call. Somebody has it in their backyard or their garage or something like that. Oftentimes it's the landscaper that finds it, and we're lucky if the homeowner kind of runs interference and calls us to have it removed. And sometimes it's a race between us and the landscaper getting tired of waiting for us, and we've shown up to safely remove and relocate rattlesnakes, and landscapers have already cut their heads off, and it's really a tragedy, especially like you said, when you get to know the animals and really realize how little they want to do with us, and how, if given the chance, they're going to go the opposite direction. And really, if they bite somebody, it's really an unfortunate accident, not something they're intending to do.
My understanding is a lot of times when people get bit, a lot of hikers get bit, rock climbers get bit because they'll reach up for a shelf or something and not realize the snake's basking there or just hanging out there.
So they're just trespassing on its territory.
Yeah.
So,
So what advice would you give to people so we could better coexist with these animals and not kill them? I mean,
The biggest thing is really just being aware of your surroundings. It seems simple, but if you're paying attention to where you're walking, you're not walking without a flashlight at night or sticking your hands places where you can't see. Like you said, rock climbers, they don't have much they can do about it since you're reaching up above your head. But if you're cleaning out your garage, don't fish around under shelves with your hands, or cleaning out the grill for the summer. Don't be fishing around under there with your hands where you're not going to see if there's a rattlesnake who's been coiled up all winter, nice and comfortable. That's when most bites happen, is when somebody sticks their hand in front of the snake or just their ankle, and the snake doesn't have time to process that, well, there's a wrist attached to that hand and an arm attached to that wrist, and it's way too big to eat. So if most snakes are given the chance to realize you're not a prey item, they're going to try to avoid you, unless, and that's when you get back into people who are drinking, you start antagonizing it, trying to play with it, and there still are a majority of bites that happen on the hands and face from guys, usually guys, messing with it after a few beers.
right. Yeah. That's sad too. That's really sad.
Wow. It's kind of ironic.
That would make for a very bad night. A very bad night. Definitely. No, it's good. The other problem that people don't realize too, and I saw it kind of firsthand, because I used to work for a fireplace company, and I installed a lot of fireplaces.
Oh.
And I did a lot in Scottsdale, and I did a lot out in Apache Junction. And the fact that they killed off so many rattlesnakes over the years as they built up the communities, the rats started overpopulating these areas because they're a natural food source. So you kill off the prey, or the predator, I should say, then your prey multiplies. And I think that's what the big thing in Scottsdale, and I know a big thing in Apache Junction. They're loaded with rats, especially on the outskirts.
Oh, geez, they're a constant headache for us. They tear out the insulation in the walls of the buildings here. My car broke down and was left here only a week last year, out in the front of this place. We're in an open desert environment around the facility here. In that week's time, they filled the underside of my hood with cholla. They put in a bunch of loose grass, cactus, everything, made a nest inside of my car in 1 week. And just yesterday I had a huge headache because we have a nebulizer for treating snakes that get respiratory infections and other illnesses in the barn. And I went to treat one of the snakes last night, and it was already a late day, and I found out that the pack rats had chewed the little actual capsule that nebulizes the medication off of the nebulizer and taken it to who knows where. And so I had to order some new parts for our nebulizer this morning.
Yeah, so don't kill the snakes because they eat the rats.
They're not going to steal stuff for you or make a nest under the hood of your car.
That was crazy, because every time I'd go out to work on these fireplaces, all the wires would be chewed up underneath. They'd be building nests underneath. I didn't want to stick my hands underneath them. I was scared I was going to get bit, not only by a snake, but maybe by a rat or whatever else was living under there.
That's a good point. They carry diseases that we can catch. Sure, snakes might be venomous, but we've got 35 non-venomous species, only 13 venomous here, or 14 venomous, including the coral snake. But rodents, their fecal matter carries disease you can catch. They can carry rabies themselves, and so they have way more diseases and pathogens that are transferable to humans than snakes. So if you want to consider snakes an evil, they're definitely the lesser of two evils.
Right. And the venom, what's funny about snake venom, correct me if I'm wrong in my understanding, is it's strictly to eat. It's strictly to process food and eat. Or immobilize their prey. If you're looking at neurotoxic venom, then it's to immobilize the prey. Because snakes don't have hands; they can't exactly pick up their food and eat it. So they have to stop it. They have to. And with the hemotoxic venom, it actually starts breaking down the tissue, so it's easier for them to digest. Starts the digestive process.
Yeah, exactly. It's really a lousy defense mechanism. There's a video.
Not for us, it's not.
Well,
it works for us.
Yeah, we know that it's venomous and what will happen when it bites us. But other animals and predators, there was a video going around a few months ago of a bobcat. It looked like a cat playing with a toy pawing at a rattlesnake in front of it. And you see it get bit a few times, and by the time that venom is able to really affect the bobcat, the rattlesnake's been eaten and is long dead. So it's a lousy defense for them. So it's really just there to get their prey. I think spitting cobras are kind of the only example of a snake that actually intends to use its venom offensively, and be able to spit and blind predators to
bit for like 9 feet, was it, or is it
That's a
further
good
than that?
distance.
I think I hear about 6 feet most often. Well, we've got a handful here, but they are pretty tame and used to people at this point, so I've never seen many of them spit on a couple occasions.
Don't send any empty skull cans around or anything.
Different kind of spit.
Oh, okay.
It's not the kind you want in your mouth, I can tell you that. So if somebody's out, somebody's walking through the desert, they come up on a snake, and there's snakes here that will look like a rattlesnake, like a gopher snake. Will
Yep.
resemble a diamondback pretty close. I mean, the markings would, for somebody who doesn't know the difference.
Oh, yeah.
How's a quick way, aside from the rattle, everybody knows the rattle, but that's kind of a misnomer too, because the buttons on the rattle can break off.
Yep,
So
they can break off.
what's a quick way to identify, just by looking at a snake, it's venomous or not venomous?
Well, if you are in Arizona listening to this, the best way to tell is if it has a pointy tail or not, which can be tricky. Like you said, rattlesnakes, rattles can break off, but even when they break off, they'll have a kind of blunted off round tip to the tail where the next bead of the rattle will start growing back eventually. So if you see that rounded off tip on a tail in Arizona, that's a good clue that it's a rattlesnake that might have just lost its rattle. But gopher snakes will have that pointy tail. Their colors aren't quite the same as a rattlesnake. Most of the rattlesnakes that people confuse for being gopher snakes have the black and white striping right on the tip of their tail. Gopher snakes won't have that. And then the head shape can kind of be an indicator. Gopher snakes try to fool you on this too. They'll use that same ability to stretch their mouths open sometimes to stretch their heads wide. But it is true that rattlesnakes tend to have a more triangular shaped head, where gopher snakes, when they're at rest, will have a head about the same diameter as the rest of their body. So if it kind of looks like a big tube of snake, it's probably not venomous. If it's got a distinguishable head up the front of it, then it's probably a rattlesnake.
That's probably due to the venom glands on the side that makes their head come out.
Yep, absolutely.
So, crazy question. How long have you been working with the venomous?
The venomous specifically, only about 3 years. At the shelter in general, about 4 years now.
So what got you interested in it?
Well, I've always been a reptile geek. As long as I can remember, that's how my brother and I growing up would spend our weekends. Saturday mornings, we'd go terrorize the neighbors' front yards, lifting up their water meter caps, looking for the little western banded geckos. And inevitably, we'd happen across rattlesnakes, and then I got interested in those too. But when I started at the shelter here, I was really just interested in the medical and quarantine animals. That was really my job, was taking care of the sick animals here.
Right.
And just kind of over time, I started working with the venomous curator who was working at the time. And I was hired on after volunteering for about a year, put in about 700 volunteer hours in that year.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
That was a dream come true. Never thought I'd be able to call working with venomous snakes my day job.
Your day job? Yeah, that's well, some people might call you crazy for that, but
I get a fair amount of that.
I respect it. I have a lot of respect for that.
I love them. They're such neat and interesting animals. And I do tell people about a year before I started working with the venomous, when I was just working with the medical, I remember having kind of this conversation with the current venomous keeper, asking him, why are you doing this?
Right.
And really deciding, well, that's cool, but it's just not worth the risk. And as I learned more about it and got more comfortable with the animals, I realized how much you can lower the risk by just knowing what you're doing and knowing about the animals and giving them respect. And it's cliche, but knowledge is power. The more you know, the less scary they become.
And you have to be smart about it too. You can't get complacent ever.
You can't get comfortable.
Yeah, because that would be bad. That wouldn't be good. Especially at PHS, you guys don't just deal with rattlesnakes.
No.
You deal with cobras. You deal with all different types of vipers.
Yep.
So, does that worry you? I mean,
people don't believe me, but the big rattlesnakes are more intimidating than a lot of the cobras and mambas here. Yeah, the cobras and mambas, they're fast, but they telegraph a lot of their movements, where rattlesnakes and vipers are kind of more like landmines. If you get inside a certain bubble, they're lightning fast. They can strike quicker than we can think, and they're not forgiving if you make a mistake. Where cobras and mambas, if you're staying out of their way, they're kind of content to do their thing a lot of the times and just kind of go the opposite direction.
I would have thought the opposite. I would have thought the cobras would have been more, scary. The mambas, you hear.
The Philippine cobras are pretty nasty.
Are they?
Most of the cobras are fairly docile. They've been in captivity a while at this point, but if you work kind of passively with them, steer the head away from you, and just kind of lightly guide them where you want them to go, they're pretty cooperative. Same with the mambas, but some of the rattlesnakes, they just take that defensive posture, and it's kind of hard to break, especially on the larger ones that have a 2-foot strike range, 3-foot strike range on some of the bushmasters that are larger.
So that's another thing I hear from a lot of people too is, it leaped at me for 6 feet and it tried to bite me, and I know that's not the case. I think they can strike within a third of their body length, right?
Yep, that's about the rule of thumb.
So it's not an average size here is probably not a very big strike range.
Yeah,
So
we find our average size rattlesnakes only about 3 feet,
Right.
so you're looking at about a foot strike range.
we don't have the 8-foot rattlesnakes. The old
No.
lady that calls up and says, "I got a 10-foot rattlesnake on my patio. Come get it."
No, even in captivity, western diamondbacks, our largest species here in Arizona, they only get to about 6 feet when they're being fed every single week, and they eat less than that in the wild. So we usually see them about 3 to 4 feet long. But our largest one's about 5.5 feet, and he has a strike range that'll keep you on your toes.
I'm sure. So if you're on a trail and you come across one, just take a step to the side and just keep on moving, and they're not going to get you.
Yeah,
they're not going to
absolutely.
chase you.
No, they're not going to chase you.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, we like to say as long as you're 3 feet away from any rattlesnake, you're relatively safe. You can take any pictures you want. Just don't step any closer than that 3-foot boundary and walk around them.
You guys hear a lot about kids being bit. Does it happen quite often, or is it mostly drunk adults?
No, there's a few unfortunate bites to kids every year. One of the big kind of peaks in when kids get bitten is actually Easter. Easter Sunday, kids will go, exactly. Every year we'll go around to the news stations and do a PSA because that hospitals just get inundated because kids are rushing out, sometimes racing their siblings to jam their hands under bushes right where the snakes are hiding, and
That kind of falls on the parents to, hey, maybe I won't put it under the bush.
That's where we go out and try to tell people.
Educate people.
Tell your kids we're not hiding them low. They're all at least going to be off the ground. You can kind of lower that risk.
Yeah. It'd be a drunk party to Easter egg hunt, don't you think? Put them all under the bush. See how that works out for you. Now, is it true that they rattlesnake won't always rattle, though, right?
That is true. A lot of the times, if the rattlesnake, again, it goes back to them having time to process that you're not prey or a direct threat. But if they have that time, usually they'll choose not to rattle.
Right. Interesting.
Oh, sorry, I got distracted by the.
Oh,
I didn't know if somebody was
okay.
going to come flying in. Usually they'll rattle, is what I meant to say.
As long as there wasn't a snake behind me, I'm okay.
Huge cobra.
They got out.
No, usually they'll rattle if they've got time to process what's going on.
Right.
And some species are more predisposed to rattling and warning you. It's said that black-tailed rattlesnakes are kind of more likely to rattle. Things that rely more on their camouflage and their ability to be unseen are a little less likely to rattle. I almost stuck my hand on a speckled rattlesnake.
Jeez.
In our backyard here's Black Mountain, and I got up to the top a few minutes before my dad did and was just kind of leaning back on some rocks, enjoying the view. And when my dad came up the trail behind me, he pointed out that about a foot from my hand was a little speckled rattlesnake just sitting right there. Didn't rattle once at me, didn't let me know it was there because it knew I wasn't a threat and wasn't about to step on it, so he didn't have to warn me.
Wow, that's crazy. I saw, I think it was the other day, that somebody posted on Facebook. It was actually it was a police body cam, and there were these two people laying on this dirt road, and they were drunk or whatever, sleeping on this dirt road, and this rattlesnake literally slithered by their head and kept going, and the cop was like, "Don't move."
Oh my God.
You have a rattlesnake by your head. And as I started going by, and then he's like, "All right, roll this way." And they rolled quicker than you can imagine. It literally went right by their head.
That's
I was
wild.
blown away. I was like, "Oh my God, can you imagine?"
Yeah.
I do have a funny story to tell you. When I first volunteered here, I don't know if you guys still have the wooden cages with the glass fronts on them that you open from the back.
Yeah,
The
for
display
going out
cages.
to events and stuff.
So we're getting ready to do a show. Russ will probably kill me for telling this story, but
Oh boy.
no, it wasn't that bad. It was an experience for me because, again, you're talking to somebody who was deathly afraid of rattlesnakes at one time. But we were loading some red specks into the cage, and we had a new volunteer with us. So I had my snake tongs, and I was kind of holding the door. We're putting 4 of them in the cage. So he drops the door, and all 3 of them get out at the same time. And they were literally by my feet. I froze. I'm lucky I didn't piss my pants because I was so nervous. Because, being that close, you're like, is this thing going to strike me in the ankle? What's going to happen, And it scared the hell out of me. And from that day on, I just had the utmost respect for these animals. And, it's just, they're amazing. It's amazing.
And, that's kind of something that's incredible to see up firsthand and up close is it really kind of shows how they don't want to strike. If they don't know what's going on and they realize you're not food. I know I've been in positions where mishaps like that have happened, and a snake very easily could have bit me or punished me for a mistake I made, and they don't always do it. So
they're not.
You don't want to give them a chance to bite, but just because they have a chance and they're capable of doing it doesn't mean they'll do it every time.
Right. So they're not the evil that they're made out to be. I mean.
Oh yeah.
I think
they're not the snakes that they're made out to be.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to get biblical on me now, are you? No, and I think over the years, I think Hollywood's played a big role in portraying them as evil and, Anaconda. I mean, how many movies?
Snakes on a plane wouldn't have anything to do with that.
I mean, exactly. It's crazy, but I think an organization like the PHS, I think, really does a good job. And from my experience with them, and you guys have grown so much from what I've seen, we'll upload some footage that we took from around the facility on our website and on the podcast here. But it's amazing how you guys have grown over the years, and I think what you do is incredible. You go around, you do education in the schools. You're doing summer camps here now.
Yep, yeah, summer camps all summer long for all age groups.
Why couldn't I be a kid again?
I wish this was around when I was a kid.
Come here for a week and play with snakes. That'd be fun. I don't know. Would you like that?
Well, I don't know.
That's how some of the parents look at pickup. They'll bring their kids here who are all about it, and they're a little more standoffish, and they'll kind of wait at the gates for their kids to come out.
Yeah, they probably like the tortoises, and that's more their
they're a little more okay with those gateway reptiles, the tortoises and frogs.
Yeah. You guys have frogs here too?
Yeah, not that they're a reptile, but they fall under the umbrella of herp. We have some poison dart frogs behind you there.
Oh wow!
Nice.
Check those out.
I didn't even see them.
Yeah, they're tiny little things.
I know they're pretty colors too, usually, right?
Yeah.
Blues and reds and.
Yeah, we've got some painted Mandelas in there, so they're all beautiful black and yellow frogs. That's cool. They really stand out and look beautiful. They're not highly toxic and not toxic at all in captivity, but they're from Madagascar and still carry that name of poison dart frogs.
Probably don't want to lick them though, right? Isn't
Probably
that the whole thing? You lick the toads and you hallucinate or whatever.
Let's do some fraud.
Not sure if it's true, but I've heard that's how we've ended up with a few of our toads.
Really?
Is being confiscated from people who had them for that purpose.
Oh my God.
Which is not at all true. Not at all true. You will end up incapacitated or worse if you lick them.
Jeez. It's what do you go from Tide Pods to toads? I mean, what's the progression there? I don't get that.
Jeez.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I mean, I've heard of toe fetishes.
A toad?
Not toad.
That's funny. Oh man. So, do you have any of your volunteers ever? You mentioned that after they start volunteering here, they have nightmares. But has this place cured anybody of fears that you know of?
All the time. Right behind our facility here, we actually had a new neighbor move in behind us. Mm-hmm. We are in a somewhat residential area, and she moved in, and the lot that she moved into had been vacant for many years, had a bunch of tall, overgrown grass, and so she was terrified of snakes. And then she learned that she moved in next to the largest reptile shelter or reptile sanctuary in the country, and she's actually come a long way. We want to have a good relationship with all of our neighbors, so we started talking with her and gave her a pair of snake gaiters, the kind of bite-proof shin guards to walk around on her property while she kind of built up confidence and learned about them. And eventually we got her out here enough that she started volunteering with the tortoises and eventually worked her way up into doing our rattlesnake removal course, where we actually teach people how to Yeah, and it took her 2 goes through. First time she just sat through it, kind of watched everybody else, practiced with the non-venomous, and wasn't quite ready to move on to the rattlesnake, but came back for a second class and did it like a pro. And
That's incredible.
we're still right here to help her out if she ever needs it, but now she can do it on her own.
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, it's
That's
really
what
great
you
to
need
see.
Do the rattlesnake removal class.
Gosh, I put that on my calendar.
Sign me up. I'm right there. That's very cool. Yeah, you guys do incredible work, and you do a lot of shows around town too. Like, used to do the Children's Expo. I don't know if you guys still do that.
I don't know if we do that one. Actually, the Children's, is it called the Children's Learn and Play Expo?
It might be now. They might
Over at
have changed the name
the
of it.
railroad park.
Yeah.
We still do that every
Okay,
year.
very cool.
Calvin goes out, and one of our dedicated volunteers goes out and does that every year. And go down to the Tucson Children's Museum, do the reptile shows here in Phoenix as well. And really any chance that we have to get out and talk to the public about how cool reptiles are and the important role that they play in the environment, we really jump at those chances to teach people that the reptiles are just as important as other animals in the ecosystem.
So jumping back, and we got off course with the whole fear thing a little bit, but as far as fear of reptiles go, what do you think? What do you think is the biggest cause of that with people? Just not having the knowledge, or?
I think that's kind of the root of it, is not having the knowledge, and then all the myths and legends and stories that kind of fill in the gaps of what people don't know.
Right.
And we'll see at a lot of events, kids will come rushing up to our booths, they'll see the rattlesnakes behind glass, or even non-venomous species behind glass, and they'll be excited and stoked to see these animals. And then you'll see the parents standing 10 feet back yelling at their kids, "Get away from there, come back!" And so we teach kids at such a young age to avoid these animals and stay away from them. And that's good that they're not playing with rattlesnakes, and that's important to teach them, but it's also important to let them know that they're not just monsters, and there is a safe way to coexist with these animals.
So we're not born being afraid of these things. It's a learned habit, I think.
I would say so.
Do you have a fear of them, or a healthy respect?
Well, a healthy respect. I played with, of course, water snakes.
Right.
I mean, I never had any fear of a snake if I knew it wasn't gonna.
They can still bite, though.
So, yeah.
Well, that's interesting too, because a non-venomous like garter snake or other water snake bite, it's going to be a lot less severe than a bite from say a squirrel that you're going to be going to get a rabies shot, and I've seen hands just lacerated by squirrels. Where a non-venomous snake bites you, as long as it's a small one, like most of the ones we have in the U.S., you'll wipe away the blood, and an hour later you won't remember what hand you were bit on. It's less severe than a paper cut.
Yeah. And not so much when you get into boas and the pythons, though.
Those can be less fun.
Those hurt. I had it was my first year working with a Burmese python, and she was beautiful. She was albino, and again, you get complacent, and it's very easy to do. I was going through all my cages and cleaning out, and I stuck my hand in to grab a water bowl, and she nailed me right on the top of the hand, and poof, it hurt. Yep.
I had my first retic bite last year. Not fun.
Yeah, because their teeth are recurved, right?
Yep, they're recurved. It was Mario, that big one in the barn.
Oh, wow.
And,
the one you liked.
He grabbed my hand.
That's huge, man.
I was checking on him after one of those kind of problematic meals where he was having trouble getting it down. And he had gotten it just kind of in his body, but not really down his throat yet. So I was checking on him, kind of reached over him, and he came right up and grabbed my hand. And at that point, I just kind of had to sit and wait for him to let go, because those teeth are so recurved, you're not going anywhere.
Or rip your hand to try to
Yeah,
pull it
or
out.
you're going to tear your hand up getting it out.
Well, again, that's having knowledge, because most people's reaction would be like, oh, geez, and once you do that, it's like it's ripping into you at that point. And they have, is it 3 rows of teeth they have? Or 2?
I think it's different on the top and bottom. I want to say it's 3 on one and 2 on the other, but I'd have to recheck up on it or try to see the scar.
Oh yeah, it's 3.
Yeah, there it is.
3 rows for sure.
But no, I just sat there and waited for him to release on his own time, and I had about 24 separate punctures on my hand, but I didn't tear it out, and I was driving home 10 minutes later, which is not what's going to happen if a dog bites you. Again, that'll be a much more severe bite.
You're getting stitches and everything else,
Yeah, so even the big ones aren't quite as monstrous as a lot of people like to think.
I think the fear for a lot of people is not so much being bit by them, but being constricted by them.
Yeah,
Like bigger snakes, you know.
Yeah, look at that thing. I mean, it would engulf you pretty quick.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know if it would eat you, but it would definitely.
Well, I mean, it wrap
you know,
itself. Yeah, it wouldn't be fun.
No.
Yeah, that's a big protocol here. Is you have to have 3 people with you if you're working with one of the larger pythons. That way, you've got one person to be there with you, helping you if you get bit, and another one to go run and get more help.
Right. Yeah, because I mean they're all muscle. I mean, if they want to wrap around you, I mean the smaller ones you could
Kind
pry
of
them
untangle
off, you
from
know,
the
yeah,
tail.
I've had that happen, but yeah, you get something that's 15 to 18 feet long. You know, it's not so easy.
It's more snake than person
Right,
there.
right, yeah. Yeah, it's like 100 guys squeezing you, you know? I mean, that'd be tough. But I know, I was always taught that if they do bite you and they don't release, you can use alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and that usually does something to their senses and it'll release them.
That works in a lot of cases. Mario wasn't too perturbed by it when it happened.
Didn't bother him?
I didn't have rubbing alcohol on hand, but we had a bottle of hand sanitizer right there, and we took the cap off and we're rubbing the straw kind of around his gums and around his jawline, and he probably released sooner than he would have, but I was still sitting there for a while.
Yeah. It doesn't feel good.
No, I learned my lesson. I haven't had a bite since then.
Yeah, I'm sure.
How about Gila monsters?
Oh yeah, let's talk about Gila monsters.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
What do you want to know about?
How common are they around here now? I mean,
It's really hard to have real specific and sure population numbers because they spend so much of their life underground.
Yeah.
We'll get calls about them in people's homes and backyards, and we really can't do a lot to relocate them. They spend their whole life in a quarter-mile range, but most of the time people will see them once and then not again for a year or not again for a couple of years. But they are believed to kind of be all over the place, just right under our noses, underground.
they're just nomadic, huh? Is
Yeah.
that what it is?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they're not really venomous, are they?
They are.
So they do have a venom?
Yep, they do have a venom, and their venom is the complete opposite of a rattlesnake's, where it's mostly just to get food. Their
Right.
venom doesn't really help with food acquisition, it's just there as a defense, and so I like to think of Gila monsters as kind of having a 3-pronged defense system. They've got the bright orange and black colors, almost like a traffic cone to warn you, I'm slow and stocky, but I'm venomous, I'm not
Right.
going to be an easy meal. And they've got the osteoderms, the little bones actually implanted in their skin that act almost like chainmail armor, so if something does go ahead and bite them like a coyote or some other predator, it's not going to get too far before it turns around and uses its 3rd prong of defense, the bite, where they bite and they have to actually latch on because unlike rattlesnakes that have venom glands to inject venom, they just have to kind of gnaw the venom into you. It seeps up from their bottom jaw through their gums, and they'll hold on for as long as they can. If you go to the hospital with a Gila monster bite, it's fairly common that the Gila monster's coming
Still there,
along for the ride.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I think that they were labeled, Rush used to label them the bulldogs of the reptile world.
Yeah.
It's like putting a pair of vice grips on your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't release. But how come, I mean, I don't think it's very common to be bit by one. You'd have to really antagonize one to be bit, right?
Yeah, if snakes are 90% you were messing with it to get bit, Gila monsters are 100%.
Yeah.
So much so that because they're a federally protected species, if you go to the hospital with a bite, chances are Game and Fish will meet you there and be writing you a ticket unless you have a really good excuse for how you got your finger in that thing's mouth.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a hefty fine.
Yeah, I've seen numbers all over the place from people just harassing them with little $700 fines and people who have actually killed them and bragged about it on their social media being hit with $40,000 fines.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they take their preservation very seriously.
That's, do you want to heal a monster?
Well, did we pass any?
I don't think we did. Did we see any?
Just one in the barn. His name's Frederick. He's been here forever. You might remember him.
If it was in the house back in the day, that's probably the one.
That might be it. It's
Yeah.
kind of one of Dan's babies.
Yeah.
He loves that Gila monster.
I got to hold one when I volunteered here. They're really docile. They're really cool.
Oh yeah.
They have a not too distant cousin. We were talking about it earlier. The beaded, the Mexican beaded.
Yeah, they're a bigger, meaner cousin from south
Yeah.
of the border.
They're more of a brown. I think more of a brownish color, aren't they? They look more like almost like I guess a bearded dragon color, maybe. I'm trying to remember. I haven't seen one in a while.
Not quite. We can see if any of ours are still awake. They're in an outdoor enclosure here because
okay.
they are so large. But they just kind of look like a souped up Gila monster. Gila monsters at their largest are about 24 inches. The beaded lizards can get about twice that size, a little under twice that size.
So they had that pinkish hue to them, or
They switched the orange or that pinkish hue out for yellow, so instead of being black and orange or black and yellow, or black and pinkish, they'll be just a solid
yellow.
black and yellow color.
That's cool.
They're beautiful, but just kind of twice the size. And they also have the interesting behavior of when we're cleaning in their enclosure, they'll actually come up and kind of try to headbutt you before
Really?
biting, where Gila monsters will just kind of open mouth hiss at you. The beadeds will kind of make contact and kind of headbutt you out of their cage.
interesting. I've never seen. I'd like. That'd be cool to go see them because I've never actually seen one in person. I've
Yeah.
I've seen plenty of Gilas, but
Yeah, won't mess with them now, but hopefully be able to see a few.
that's cool. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Well, thank you.
Well, that was a good topic. What else you got? What else you curious about?
I'm ready for another beer.
Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you for coming out and doing
Thanks
this.
for having us. So, do you guys still work off of donations?
Largely, yeah. We do get some revenue from doing the camps and going out to schools and doing reptile shows. A few of the shows actually pay us to bring our exhibits out. But other than that, it's kind of what we can bring in on our own as a shelter and what's donated to us that keeps the lights on and
Yeah.
keeps shipments of rodents coming in to feed the snakes.
I'm sure you guys get a lot of outpour from the community. I'm sure a lot of people volunteer and help out and donate.
Oh yeah, there's no way we could do this without our huge network of volunteers. We've got about 30 really consistent here every week volunteers, but in total we've got about 100 on-record volunteers
Oh, wow.
working with us right now.
That's awesome.
A few of the local grocery stores call us whenever they have produce going bad. We get about 3,000 pounds of produce donated each week, which our tourist collection, there's
That's
no way we
yeah.
can sustain it without those donations. So we really are here for the community and here because of the community.
Yeah, that's
They
phenomenal.
make
That's
it
awesome.
work.
So if people, if our followers, our fans, if they decide they want to donate, what's the best way? Can they go to your website?
Yeah. If you're here locally, you can go to the website, find out about donating, as well as coming out for a tour. We do offer tours a few times a week. We're not like a zoo where you can just wander in any time, but
Right.
we have a few scheduled tours, and if you have a large enough group, we can do private tours as well. And there is also a donate tab if you're not local and just want to kind of support the mission and support awareness about reptiles and how amazing and misunderstood they are.
Yeah,
But,
that's very cool. We'll put a link to your website up there, so
Yep.
if people
Yeah.
want to jump on there and donate, or even come out and check out the facility. It's amazing to walk
Yeah.
around and see what's here.
I'm very impressed.
Yeah. And you got alligators and crocodiles. I mean, how cool is that?
yeah, somehow that didn't even come up.
No,
we got
didn't-
alligators and
we're talking about
crocs.
rattlesnakes, but you got alligators and crocodiles. Yeah.
Yep, I think it's the second largest collection of crocodilians in the U.S. at this point.
Wow.
So a little bit of something for every type of reptile lover.
And you have the one that was found here in Arizona,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is
Clem found up in northwestern Arizona.
that's crazy. Been there for years, from what I understand.
Yeah,
Just reading the story.
yeah, it was a local thing. People go out and feed the gator. I guess Russ tells me when he first got the call that there was a we're talking about rattlesnakes the whole time. There was an alligator up in the pond that needed to be removed. He's like, you're crazy. It's not up there. It's too cold for them, or not enough food for them. And it's Arizona. We don't have alligators. And sure enough, they put a couple traps up, and I think it was 2 days later, and he sprung, and in came Clem.
He's pretty good size too. That must have been a heck of a trap.
He's grown quite a bit from when he,
Oh, really?
from what I understand, from when he first came here.
I would imagine his food source probably wasn't the greatest, living where he was living. I mean,
Yeah, that's kind of an anomaly that he was doing as well as he was and alive when they found him. Russ speculates that he might not have made another winter up there with
Yeah.
how skinny he was when he came in. I guess he was about railroad ties, what Russ says.
wow.
And now he's just massive.
Yeah, you saw that. That was we'll upload that footage too. That was very
So
cool.
just a pet gone wrong for somebody,
Yeah.
most likely.
Well, the problem is they would thrive in our waters here because warm water. You know, I mean, the fish. I mean, they would do really well if people
Be
released
great in
them,
Tepetale Lake.
right? Yeah, let's go swimming at
Start another panic.
go swimming at Canyon Lake and have an alligator come up. That'd be interesting. Well, no, very cool. Well, we appreciate you doing the interview with
Yeah,
us. It's
yeah,
awesome,
sure.
and we'll definitely put a link to the website and get people on board to maybe sign up to volunteer or donate, to the
that'd be
facility,
amazing.
which would be awesome.
Absolutely great. It's phoenixherp.com. We don't make people spell out all herpetological. It's a mouthful, but
Now I feel bad because our website's The Truth About Beer and very long.
if people know what beer is. We get a lot of people asking what herping is or herpetology is. Our newest neighbors who moved across the street from us. One thought that we might be a herpes research center, and the other thought that it was herpetological and thought that maybe it's a plant research facility. So,
Or a pot farm, one or the other.
yeah, something like that.
That's interesting. Well, very cool. Again, thanks for hanging
Yeah,
out
it's
with
my
us.
pleasure.
And,
Thanks
All
for
fun.
giving me to.
I learned something myself.
did you? That's good. It's always a learning experience with beer.
With beer.
I was gonna say thanks for giving me an excuse to drink on the job.
Right? Well, yeah, here's to our first episode.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Oh, you're
You're ready for the second.
I didn't talk as much, so it went on.
Welcome to the truth about beer.